Japanese wolf. The Japanese wolf was a small type of wolf that lived in Japan until it was declared extinct in 1905. Long ago, people respected it as a guardian of the mountains and a helper that protected farms from animals like wild boars. Some villages even kept wolf skulls or charms to protect their homes. Unfortunately, though, the Japanese wolf had a big spread of rabies, which made some wolves dangerous to people. The government at the time wanted wolves gone, so people were paid to kill them. At the same time, forests were cut down, making it harder for wolves to find food or shelter. However, not all hope is lost, because even after the last wolf was killed in 1905, people continued to report sightings. Some of these were close, with photos or sounds recorded. One well-known sighting was in 1996, when a man named Hiroshi Yagi took pictures of a wolf-like animal in the mountains. He later set up camera traps, and in 2018 recorded a howl that experts said was very close to a real wolf's call. There are also reports of strange dog-like animals that don't match any known species, and even though some experts think these might be wild dogs, wolves from other places, or even unknown animals, others believe it might be the Japanese wolf. The forests it used to live in have changed a lot, and there's no strong proof yet, like DNA or a clear photo, so the chances are slim, but not zero. Ground sloth. Ground sloths were giant, slow-moving animals that once lived across the Americas. In what is now the United States, they disappeared around 11,000 years ago, but there are some interesting stories. I want to introduce you to the mapinguari, a legendary creature from Brazilian folklore said to live deep in the Amazon rainforest. It is usually described as a giant, hairy beast that protects the forest and its animals. There are many different ideas about where the story of the mapinguari came from, but the most interesting theory is that the mapinguari is actually the giant ground sloth. Some of these sloths even had thick skin with bony plates, like armor, which is similar to the mapinguari's bulletproof body in some of the stories. There have been reports of sightings into the 20th century, especially in places like the states of Amazonas, Pará, and Acre, and one man even said he saw a mapinguari eat his friend. So far, however, no clear evidence has been found. The truth might be more complicated. These could actually have been ground sloths, or just old stories passed down from when they were still alive. We still don't know for sure. Carolina parakeet. The Carolina parakeet was the only native parrot species in the eastern United States, and it is now extinct. The last known individual, called Incas, died in captivity at the Cincinnati Zoo on February 21, 1918, in the same cage that once held Martha, the last passenger pigeon. The species was officially declared extinct in 1939, but a few unconfirmed sightings were reported, including a filmed group in Georgia in 1937 and a sighting by experts in South Carolina in 1938, but none were verified. Most of what we know about the Carolina parakeet comes from anecdotal accounts and museum specimens, since no detailed scientific studies were done while the species was still alive. Their population began to shrink rapidly with the arrival of European settlers, especially as forests were cleared in the eastern and southern parts of the country. Their social behavior made things worse. When hunters shot a few birds, others in the flock would return to the spot, making it easier to kill large numbers at once. Despite the mystery, the Carolina parakeet is now considered by many as extinct, with around 720 preserved skins and 16 skeletons stored in museums around the world. Zanzibar leopard. The Zanzibar leopard was the largest predator on Unguja Island and played an important role in the local ecosystem. But by the 20th century, growing conflict between people and leopards led to hate for the species. Many locals even believed witches kept leopards and used them to cause harm. After the Zanzibar Revolution in 1964, a campaign combining anti-witchcraft and leopard extermination efforts was launched. The last confirmed sighting of a living Zanzibar leopard was in the early 1980s, but reports of sightings and attacks on livestock have continued, and local people believe the species still exists. In 2018, a camera trap on Unguja Island appeared to capture footage of a leopard, which brought some renewed hope, although some experts questioned its authenticity. The exact location of the video remains unclear, and without genetic evidence, it's not possible to confirm if the leopard seen was native to Zanzibar or just a normal leopard introduced from the mainland. Eastern cougar. The eastern cougar was once native to the forests of eastern North America, but it's now considered extinct. Or more so, there's a debate on this. A consensus among wildlife officials in 21 eastern U.S. states agrees that this population has been eradicated. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also reviewed all available evidence and concluded that the eastern cougar had likely been extinct since the 1930s, which led to its official removal from the endangered species list in 2018. The Canadian government has taken a more neutral stance, calling the evidence inconclusive. Some officials in Ontario have stated that cougars are present in the province, but most experts agree that there is no proof of a continuous or breeding population in eastern Canada. Thousands of cougar sightings have been reported in rural parts of eastern North America since the 1960s, and several private organizations have formed to track evidence. Also, in 2011, a cougar struck and killed by a car in Connecticut was confirmed through DNA analysis to have come from South Dakota's Black Hills, having traveled over 1,500 miles. Still, experts say that long-distance dispersals are typically made by young males, and recolonization depends on females establishing new breeding groups, which has not yet happened east of Nebraska. Interest in reintroducing cougars to the Northeast also re-sparked once a 2016 study found that doing so could reduce deer populations and prevent thousands of deer vehicle collisions, potentially saving hundreds of lives and billions of dollars over a 30-year period. Caribbean monk seal. The Caribbean monk seal is considered extinct, but some people still believe it might survive in remote areas. It was once common throughout the Caribbean, including the Bahamas, Cuba, and the Gulf of Mexico, and the first recorded mention of the species was during Christopher Columbus's second voyage in 1494, when 8 seals were killed on a beach. By the late 1600s, seals were being hunted heavily for their blubber, which was used as oil for lamps and to lubricate machinery on sugar plantations. Hunting continued into the 1800s, with reports of hundreds of seals being killed in a single night. By 1850, the population had declined so much that they could no longer be commercially hunted. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, scientific expeditions occasionally found monk seals and often killed them for museum collections. For example, a 1886 expedition killed 42 seals in just 4 days. This worsened the situation, and sightings of Caribbean monk seals became rare in the 20th century. The last confirmed sighting was in 1952 at Saranilla Bank, and the species was officially listed as endangered in 1967, but by then, it was considered almost certainly extinct. These seals were especially vulnerable because they were docile and did not flee from humans. Today, some unconfirmed sightings continue to be reported in places like Haiti and Jamaica, but scientists think these are likely hooded seals from the North Atlantic that sometimes stray into the region, even though some are hopeful that they still exist. Great auk. The great auk was a large, flightless seabird that once lived across the North Atlantic, and it had been a part of human life for tens of thousands of years, serving as a food source for Neanderthals and early modern humans, and appearing in prehistoric cave art. As Europeans explored the Atlantic, they too used the great auk for food, oil, and feathers. They were easy to hunt due to their docile nature and inability to fly, and they were killed by the hundreds for centuries. By the 16th century, the great auk population was already in decline from widespread hunting. Ships even anchored near breeding colonies and herded birds aboard to be slaughtered. Despite early attempts to protect the species, including bans on feather hunting, the damage had already been done. By 1800, breeding colonies like the one on Funk Island had been wiped out. The last known birds were killed in 1844 on Eldey Island off Iceland, collected by hunters fulfilling museum orders. As the species became rare, museums and collectors wanted their eggs and skins even more, raising their prices and further accelerating their extinction. Today, only 78 skins, 75 eggs, and 24 full skeletons remain, mostly in museums. None of the birds that hatched after 1844 are known to have survived, even though a possible sighting occurred in 1852, but it remains unconfirmed. There have been some other sightings, even though most think they're misidentifications with other animals, like penguins. Tasmanian tiger. The Tasmanian tiger, also known as the thylacine, is officially extinct, but some people believe it might have survived beyond its last confirmed sightings. It originally lived across mainland Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea, even though in the mainland, it likely disappeared around 3,200 years ago, which is roughly when the dingo appeared and human activity increased. Dingoes may have outcompeted thylacines for food and territory, especially since dingoes hunted in packs, had more durable skulls, and were more adaptable in diet. In Tasmania, though, where dingoes never reached, the thylacine survived into the 20th century. They were blamed for attacking livestock, especially sheep, and were heavily hunted, so much so that the Tasmanian government paid bounties for dead thylacines from 1888 to 1909, leading to the deaths of at least 2,000 individuals. Despite the rising rarity of the species, official protection wasn't introduced until July 1936, just 59 days before the last known thylacine died at Hobart Zoo on September 7, 1936. She may have died from neglect after being left exposed to extreme weather, and her remains were forgotten in storage and only rediscovered and confirmed in 2022. Despite being declared extinct in the 1980s, there have been thousands of unconfirmed sightings reported, especially in Tasmania and southern parts of mainland Australia. Rewards were even offered for proof, but no confirmed evidence has ever surfaced. A major scientific project that launched in 2022 aims to bring the thylacine back through genetic techniques using its closest living relative, the fat-tailed dunnart. And although this de-extinction effort has drawn skepticism, researchers have made progress, including recovering RNA from a 130-year-old specimen and completing the full genome sequence in 2024. Ivory-billed woodpecker. The ivory-billed woodpecker was added to the endangered species list in 1967, but in 2021, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service proposed removing it and declaring it extinct. However, after hearing from the public and experts, some of whom insisted the bird still exists, the agency decided to wait and gather more evidence before making a final decision. It used to live in old forests in the southeastern United States, until its numbers began to drop sharply in the late 1800s due to widespread logging and hunting by bird collectors. The species was already believed by some to be extinct by the 1920s, but there was one last confirmed sighting in 1944, just before the final destruction of its main forest habitat. The only widely accepted video and audio of the bird were recorded during that time by a team of researchers in Louisiana. Since 1944, there have been many reported sightings and possible audio recordings of ivory-billed woodpeckers, but many of these were probably misidentifications of similar birds, like the pileated woodpecker, or even sounds made by blue jays or ducks. For example, in 2004, researchers in Arkansas reported a possible video of an ivory-billed woodpecker and collected audio recordings, but opinions were split. Some experts supported the idea, while others believed it was just another pileated woodpecker. Even new videos from trail cameras and drones, released in 2023 by a group called Project Principalis, didn't convince most scientists, who said the footage was blurry and probably showed other woodpecker species. Over time, the bird became sort of a legend among birdwatchers. If you liked this video, subscribe for similar ones or join my Discord to suggest another.